Hey everybody, Andrew here again from Music Theory Logic. Today is going to be another I Wish I Knew. Today is one I've been looking forward to for some time. And today it's I wish I knew about ghost producing. This ghost producing term is pretty much known really in like the dance music world and hip hop. If you're not familiar with that term, ghost producing refers to when one artist claims he wrote a piece of music, but in reality, he had a ghost or someone else create the piece of music for him. So why would somebody do this? Well, it may be kind of obvious, but if you are already a musician or perhaps you're just curious about this music industry stuff, there's obviously a lot of work to be done besides just making a record. There's the look of the artist, the logo of the artist, the social media, how the artist presents themselves, everything that falls under the sun of what a musician or a music artist, a performing artist is without the music. So this, really, there's like a lot of different topics to cover here. Some of the main things I would like to touch on is that ghost producing is not to be confused with co-producing. So the term ghost producing really implies that there's some sort of deception going on. So that is, making it seem like this artist, this brilliant person who is insecure, so they don't want to showcase themselves producing, but they create this brilliant sounding music on their own, and that anybody who thinks that they have any help with that is a complete hater. So there has to be some deception going along, and I'll keep this somewhat brief today because we could talk about this for a long time. But let's talk about like basically how ghost producing happens, what I view to be problematic with it, and how it differs from former eras in music. I know ghost producing is something in the hip hop rap world, but I don't know that world as well as I know the dance music world. And to me, ghost producing was really a term that came out with dance music. Why would a dance music artist be more likely to have a ghost producer than a rock band or something like that? Well, one of the main reasons, again, ghost producer doesn't just mean that that person wrote the track, but they did the sound design, they picked the arrangement, they did all of those things. So a dance music artist in almost every case is a DJ. What does a DJ do when they perform? They do a live mix, hopefully, where they're essentially playing recordings. They are playing parts of recordings, and they're creating a seamless musical experience for the people that are listening to the set or are in the room experiencing the set live, where they're getting to hear music that they are familiar with in some cases, music that they aren't familiar with but are drawn to because of how it's presented. So dance music really revolves around the art of DJing. Now, I'm not the first person to talk about this, but the skill set that someone needs to DJ has nothing or very little to do with the skills that somebody needs to produce a top charting record, whether that's an instrumentally performed record or an electronic record. So for instance, when you're DJing, perhaps I'll talk about some of these skills, but there's things like beat matching, song selection, crowd control, understanding what you're playing and how it's going to take your listeners on a journey, reading the crowd, responding to those certain vibes and cues, knowing your audience, all those things. But none of those things have to do with music theory or production skills or mixing skills or really anything besides DJing. That being said, DJing is a very difficult art form. Like many things, it's easy to create something that's like par level or just a basic DJ set. But like many things, there's many nuances to DJing, and there's without a doubt different levels of DJs. So there are some very, very talented DJs out there, and I don't mean this to offend any of them. But in dance music, in the last 12, 20 years, whatever, we've had this transition from just DJs to DJ producers. So these are the artists that are, producing their own music and then also performing live in their DJing sets. So with that sort of creation, there were a lot of people in dance music that were perhaps DJing large rooms, but didn't, again, have the skill set to make their own original music. This is where ghost producing comes in. So because DJs in general are playing recordings when they're performing, that doesn't, you can be really good at doing that and not know how to produce a record. That just makes it very likely that somebody would perhaps want to hire someone to help them create a record or to solely create the record. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with teams creating music or producers or co-producers. I really think, and to me, the thing that bothers me about this, and if you're a friend of mine, I've talked about this a lot, but the thing that bothers me is that you are giving the wrong or an inaccurate presentation of who someone is to a fan base. And obviously entertainment industry is about that. But to me, there's something that's extra bad when you allow someone with money to purchase the creativity from someone who perhaps who perhaps needs money more than they can maintain their creative integrity. In other words, many people in music, like myself, some months it's easier to make money in this industry than other months. There's lots of people that are incredibly talented producers who don't necessarily have the brand behind them, which we'll talk about more in these videos. But the modern music industry in many ways relies on the brand of the performer. So yeah, I just think there's something really disingenuous when an artist presents an album, doesn't provide any credits, and passes that off as solely their own. Now, let's talk about how ghost producing is done and how that would legally even happen. So there's something called an NDA, which is an acronym for a non-disclosure agreement. It's a standard contract used in business primarily to protect an idea. So let's say I created an invention. I'm going to pitch it to this private equity firm with the hopes of them giving me money for my idea or to develop my idea. I'm going to have them sign a non-disclosure agreement, which says that if they talk about the product, then I can hold them financially responsible. Now, non-disclosures in music have also become a thing, which basically means that if I were to hire somebody to work on a song, I could have them sign a non-disclosure agreement, which basically means they can't ever talk about what they did on the song. And the reason you might do that is, again, to protect the brand or to protect the artist. Doesn't necessarily mean anything's going wrong, but I do think that non-disclosure agreements need to be reformed in some way so that it's not possible for someone who has money, someone else who has creativity and no money, to say, hey, I can give you this money for your creativity. If you sign along the dotted lines, that mean I can hold you financially responsible should you ever take credit for your creative work. So again, I've probably made it pretty clear. I wish I knew about ghost producing for a few different reasons. One, so that I didn't necessarily compare myself to something that was like artificially created, which I'll talk more about. Not comparing yourself never really helps in music. But there's something that, as I was working hard in electronic music production, and then I found out about the whole idea of ghost producing and the fact that certain artists have the resources to hire teams to build them sounds or to mix their records, or to create the ideas or to take an idea and make something that's fully professional sounding, just doesn't seem right. Now, let me present the counter argument. What a lot of people will say as the counter argument is that, like, look at Pink. She has a songwriter, shout out Linda Perry, right? a songwriter is a lot different than a ghost producer. So a ghost producer kind of implies that, first of all, a songwriter is getting credit. So if you look at the album or all music, you'll figure out who the songwriters were. The songwriters are also getting paid royalties, so that makes it more incentivizing. Now, some ghost producers, I've heard rumors they will make royalties as well, but that makes it more difficult to keep all of that secret. So the Beatles had George Martin. He was their producer. Many people called him the fifth Beatle. Jimi Hendrix had Eddie Kramer. Led Zeppelin had Peter Grant, their manager and co-producer. They had, this has been happening for a long time, but I think there's something really different when a songwriter or a producer helps an artist, somebody who is singing, playing, doing something unique that, in other words, the record could not have been made without them. So if you take the Beatles, for example, George Martin obviously helped a ton with vocal arrangements. However, the Fab Four, the Beatles, had to be tremendous singers and performers themselves for that to even work. And ultimately, those were ideas that they then executed. If you take Pink as an example, she's a brilliant, brilliant singer. I think one of the greatest singers of the last 20, 30 years in music. So that's a lot different. Now, so perhaps somebody's a great DJ. Well, that's awesome, but that is, again, a different skill than producing the record. So let's talk about co-producing. In dance music, it's super common for an artist to perhaps write their whole song and then have someone else do the mix of the record. Totally fine. It's pretty standard for people to work with sample companies or sound designers, stuff like that. Also, nothing wrong there. I think it's all the transparency. So there's nothing wrong with having crediting a mixing engineer. In fact, like every song that you can look up that was released and sold in the modern world since the 60s, with the exception of later Prince records, was mixed by a separate engineer. Mixing refers to when the song is finished, you're leveling things out, you're applying effects and compression, you're taking the song and creating like a really cool experience for the listeners. And it's super important. And in dance music, it's even more important because back to DJing, when you're performing this music, you're playing tracks next to each other, meaning the mix and master quality of that music is really important so that the music blends in a way that the listener can't tell. Just got way quieter, got way louder. It sounds completely different. So mixing, I think, in music that's DJ'd is pretty important. So yeah, I went on quite a rant today. The main thing I'd like to say is that if you weren't aware of this, ghost producing is something that's super common in the modern music industry. Right now, it's totally allowed. There are even websites completely dedicated to providing people with music that they can release as their own without giving anyone credit. So yeah, it's already kind of almost like part of the business model of dance music in many ways. But I would love to hear your opinion on this. Do you agree with me in that a non-disclosure agreement shouldn't allow someone with money to purchase the idea of someone who values that money more than the idea in the moment? Should it be legal for somebody to take someone's name off of a song just because they paid for it? I could see a scenario where artists with money totally can hire a producer. They can pay them out, work for hire. They can, make it so that producer doesn't make any money from the song aside from that initial payment. However, we live and die by our credits and how people know us in music. So I don't think it should be allowed for someone to not to take someone's name off of a song regardless of a non-disclosure agreement. I feel like it ultimately hurts the fans of music. It hurts the musicians themselves. This is something I would love to see change. But again, if it doesn't change, it is what it is. Take advantage of ghost producing. So if you're an artist and you're really good at producing, you're probably going to have opportunities to create tracks for DJs or rappers or other musicians. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't pick the game. We just figure out how to navigate the game. Per point of me doing this video was just so that you knew about this extra sort of playing piece on the board. Really briefly talk about rap music. So like hip hop music has its own sort of drama about ghost producing. It's not as much with the instrumentals. Hip hop is actually incredible at crediting the beat makers in many cases, which is awesome. Like they'll even put like produced by in World Star videos, which I think is awesome. But there's been some drama about ghostwriters for lyrics. So because rapper is rapping and not singing, there's been many examples of people who write the words for someone else who then performs the words. I still think that is better because the person has to perform the words. They have to at least know the words in the song. If I take an instrumental track that comes out on Spinning Records that has no words in it, right? Then what did that DJ do if they weren't the producer? Like their executive producer. That's the better term for EDM. Executive producer / DJ. That makes sense because an executive producer is more like telling what the producers and actual creative people are doing. So yeah, I'm probably going to get some bad feedback about this, good feedback. But if you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button. Stay up on my future rants. Hopefully you found this helpful or at the very least interesting. I think more people need to talk about this. And I'm sure I will be back for more videos on the topic. But got to work on some music. So should you. Till next time. Talk to you guys later.